Welcome to the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Small business owners, do you ever feel that sometimes many of the clients you work with tend to be problematic? When you work with these particular clients, your work feels undervalued and there's no real reward for all the blood, sweat, and tears you have put into projects related to these clients. Whenever you work with them, you feel drained every day. We've all been there, including myself. Trish Saemann is the author of Get More Clients You Love, Mastering the Alignment Attraction Framework, and she joins me today to discuss this issue in more detail. We will cover some common problems entrepreneurs face related to poor fitting leads, as well as some tips and tricks to help your business attract clients that align with your values. Welcome to BizCast, Trish. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Christian, and I appreciate the warm introduction as well.
I'm excited to learn a lot of information from you. I went through and I read your book, and first I must say that I wish I had read your book nearly 10 years ago when I started this business. When I started CDG, your book would have been the perfect resource for me to truly get things off the ground, because as I mentioned a few seconds ago that I've been there. I've dealt with clients who were nothing but trouble, even during my first year in business, and I feel that if I had known about your book back then, that wouldn't have been a problem.
Well, I appreciate that, Christian. And the truth is, the reason why the book was written is because I did have that problem too. So there's a part of me that's thankful for the opportunity to turn this into a book, but also wish I would have had something like this 10 or 12 years ago, because I too was struggling with really difficult clients and my livelihood depended on them. So it was such a weird place to be. So I appreciate that sentiment and I appreciate the compliment.
Yes, it truly is a wonderful book, and I will be telling everybody about it. Please tell us more about yourself and more about why you wrote the book and developed the Alignment Attraction Framework. What will readers learn from it?
Sure, great question. So the reason why I wrote the book, like I mentioned a moment ago, is because I was struggling with these issues as well. And when I started my business, part of the appeal of starting my business, which is also, just like you, a digital marketing firm, was to have an element of flexibility. I really didn't want to work for anyone else, and I wanted to be available for my, at the time, much younger family. And I started taking on clients, but I was not quite as discerning as I should have been with regards to clients. I kind of came to the table with the mentality that sales cures all ills. So if I made a sale, I was happy. It didn't really matter if they were a good fit for what we could deliver. And what I found was that I kept almost reinventing my business every time I took on a new client. Now, I wasn't taking on bookkeeping clients and I wasn't, sending people to their homes to clean their homes, but it did feel like a far too wide a berth of people to bring into my business, when really we offered, digital marketing services, but not everything marketing related. We didn't produce pens, we weren't, at least at the time, we weren't building websites, though we do that now. And bringing in those kinds of clients that were not a good fit really just ended up stressing me out, stressing my team out, and ultimately stressing out my clients. And then there were other circumstances where exactly the kind of work that we do was the kind of work they needed, but they were very difficult either in personality or expectations or what they were willing to pay. So I also started to take on poor fit clients, not because I couldn't deliver, but because they were not collaborative partners. Because again, I came to the table with this, lacking mentality, like anything that was going to come my way was meant for me. And that's simply not true. So as far as what I hope people will learn from listening to the podcast and also reading the book, is recognizing what the meaning of the word fit is. And it isn't just, do they need what we do, but also, is this somebody who's willing to partner with me so that we can get them the outcomes they seek? So that's what I'm hoping everybody learns today.
Right. This is certainly going to be an episode that I'm going to be recommending all first-time business owners check out. We are going to cover some crucial information that'll help them start things off on the right foot. And, a lot of the stuff that you discussed was extremely relatable for myself, because I too wanted flexibility. I worked full-time at a couple of different companies before I started CDG, and I was not happy. I did not have any good bosses. Many of them were not realistic. Many of them were liars. Many of them were rude and over-demanding, and they were just unpleasant people to be working with. And I realized by starting a business, I can work with people I like working with, and I can also have that element of flexibility. So if I ever need to take care of something personal in the middle of a business day, then and I don't have any boss I have to ask permission to get a day off because I am the boss. All I have to do is check my calendar, make sure I don't have anything scheduled, and then I can go ahead and take care of said matter. It could be something related to family. It could be something related to my personal life. I want to be able to have that flexibility to take care of those things. But we're certainly going to go over more things like that in future episodes as well as we talk about the benefits of being a business owner. That's another future episode that I plan on taping sometime later in the future with a date to be discussed later. But moving on, my next question for you is, and this relates to startups. When starting a business, what are some rookie mistakes first-time business owners often make that unfortunately leads to ongoing problems during the startup phase? And I know one of them is believing that everyone is your customer. So things like that along those lines, what are some general rookie mistakes that just end up creating trouble and hinder success during a startup's first year?
Sure. And it is a great question. And it's a tricky one to answer, but I'm going to give you the best answer that I can and how I've instructed other startups. One, much like you said, not everybody is a good fit. Just like everybody you meet isn't your friend, not everybody is a good fit for you either. But more specifically than that, I think the biggest pushback that I see with not just startups, but really all businesses is knowing your market. And I think that's the piece where people get the most hung up because they genuinely try to offer their services or goods to everyone. And in doing so, they fall short and they sometimes will even undervalue what they offer. So they will not price what they offer appropriately. And in doing that, it doesn't feel like a higher end service. It doesn't feel like a valuable service if it's something that anybody can get. It's when you narrow the focus of who you're targeting and then, value pricing appropriately, that's when things are going to work out best for you and for your client. So if you're a startup and you say, well, I don't want to sell this to just anybody who'll buy it. I want you to know that I see you and I feel you and I've been you and I promise you it doesn't work that way. You're much better off niching down and saying, I offer X service or X product to this person or to these people. Now, that can vary a little bit in that if you have a storefront, you're probably going to want to focus on people who live in the area. Most of the time, people aren't going to travel very far unless it's a super unique offering. But if it's something like a service, you're much better off saying, oh, well, I offer XYZ services to women in their 40s in this area. And the reason why that matters is because, again, it sounds like a higher value offering. If you don't mind, Christian, I'm going to use an analogy that I hope resonates with startups and with seasoned business owners alike, which is imagine you own a hair salon and that hair salon, services people who are looking to get, new cuts or they're getting their hair colored and they sell shampoo and they sell other hair products and hair brushes and things like that. And most of your clientele are women who are either looking to cover up their gray hair or they're trying to dye their hair blonde or pink or brown or something along those lines. And they're looking for a specialty service. And then all of a sudden, one day, a bald guy walks into your hair salon. Will you sell to him? Sounds like a trick question. But the answer is, of course, you'd sell to him. Why wouldn't you sell anybody who walked in asking for shampoo or a hairbrush? Why wouldn't you sell to them? You don't know what he plans to do with that. But what you wouldn't do is spend any time marketing to bald men just because on the off chance he might walk in. So if you're a startup and you're listening to this, my recommendation is find a specific niche for whom you can deliver an exceptional service. I promise you, people outside the niche will still find you, but they're not your ideal client. So if you really want to make your marketing dollars stretch further, as counterintuitive as it feels, you don't want to offer it to everyone. You want to offer it to a specific someone.
That is 100% correct. No, that's 1,000,000% correct. A lot of startups need to get rid of this mindset that everyone is their customer because they're not. Everybody is not your customer. And going back to the example with the hair salon, the bald guy, yes, you would want to try to sell to him because you don't know what he's in there for. Like you said, what if he is picking up hair products for a friend or his wife or somebody who actually is within that target market? Just because that customer isn't there doesn't mean he's not shopping on behalf of somebody who is within the target market. But there's also a really good chance that he's not there for any hair related services since he does not have any hair. And then also when it comes to finding out who your ideal client is, this is where I want to stop and point all of our listeners who are first time startup business owners to stop and think about your client avatar. Could you please explain a little bit more about the proper methods of creating a client avatar?
Of course. So a couple of things that you want to consider when you're thinking about your client avatar. Some people like to look at demographics. And by demographics, I mean descriptive characteristics. Are they male or female? Are they married? Are they not married? Are they over a certain age? Are they under a certain age? Are they homeowners? All these different things are considered demographics. And sometimes it can be, well, I'm selling eye cream for women, so I'm not really going to target men. So you kind of narrow it down as to who you're going to target by demographic. But there's another component, and that other component is psychographic. Now, just because you have two, let's say 35-year-old women who are both the same height, they both have two children, they're both married, they both live in the same city, and they both get their hair dyed at the same hair salon. But do they vote the same way? They may not. Their psychographic could be completely different, despite the fact that they have overlapping demographics. So you do want to consider the mindset of your end user. What's important to them? And again, where they vote politically, that may not matter at all for you, but how they make decisions might. Are they of a certain financial level where it's going to impact where they shop? Either they make enough money that they're going to shop at X store, or they don't make enough money, so they're going to shop at Y store. So again, these two women on paper can look exactly the same, but how they see the world and how the world sees them actually impacts where they make those decisions. So again, when you're trying to define who your ideal target is, sometimes it's demographics, sometimes it's psychographics, and the final one is sometimes it's geographic. I've got people that will come and they'll mow my lawn or they'll wash my windows, but I'm not really asking them to come from 3 states away, even if they're the best window washers in the whole wide world. It's just really not a service that I need it to be exemplary, the best person in the whole world. I need somebody nearby who's within a certain price point. So when you're thinking about how you want to define your ideal client avatar, it's best to think of them as a single person. And I don't mean single in marital status. I mean a singular person, one person. And even though you will have people that fall outside, I get the biggest pushback on this because people will be like, but I have multiple client avatars. I believe you. Of course we do. We all do to some degree. But I want you to say, if you had one opportunity to speak to one demographic / psychographic, and that was the only chance you had to write all of your copy and target all of your marketing and spend all of your marketing dollars, and it was actually going to yield you the highest benefit, who's that one avatar? And again, we're not neglecting anybody else. It just, that exercise is tough because I run into it as well. But that exercise is the most important. Identify their demographic, identify their psychographic, and if your product or service is geo-specific, then identify their geographic as well. And I would name them too. This exercise happens a lot. You'll see this on a corporate level too, where they'll say, oh, well, I've got, Christian, the Latin American gentleman from California. Okay, well, that's my guy. So what do I sell to Christian? And you kind of narrow it down and narrow it down and narrow it down. Well, how does he think? How does he make purchases? What age demographic does he fall into? Where is he financially? Where does he live? Like in California, where in California do you live? So, such an enormous state, right? So all these different places and all of these different things come into play and they impact how your client avatar will make their decisions. So if you're feeling so inclined, I would name them too. It makes it much easier when you start writing your copy or any of your marketing, when you're writing it to one person, not to the masses. It makes your copy so much more effective. So hope that helps.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is one thing that many business owners often overlook. They don't think about specifically who their customer is because they're too busy thinking that everyone is their customer. You've got to have a client avatar. I've always believed the more specific your client avatar is, the better it's going to be for you in terms of creating a marketing plan as well as how you're going to target certain customers. Because if you're just targeting everyone, there's really no way to do that. But it's easier when you know specifically who your customer is. The more attributes you know about them, the easier it's going to be to tailor your marketing copy to them. But yes, thank you for really delving into how to create a good client avatar, because it's just one major thing. It's one of the most important things, I should say, that every business owner needs to know about, but it gets overlooked too much, mainly because they continue to believe that same myth. No, everybody is not your customer. Everybody will never be your customer. You need to stop and think about who your customer really is. Think about all of the different attributes about their lifestyle, where they live, what they do. That'll help you attract the right customers. Now, another area area that many startups and first-time business owners struggle with are things like writing mission statements and creating unique selling propositions or USPs. Please share with us some tips for first-time owners who have zero idea on what these things are and what they can do to make them effective.
I feel like this is such a hard one for people to kind of get their arms around. And I have like a couple of questions that I usually ask people when I walk them through this process. And one of the first questions I ask is, why did you start this business in the first place? Like you can go and get a job, or you can start a business anywhere. You can start a coffee shop, you can start teaching people how to windsurf, or you can offer them digital marketing. Like, why this business? Is it because you feel like you can serve that audience? Is it because you're passionate about the business? And the next question I typically ask once I ask that, because I make that about them, like, why did you start this business? And then it's really important to put on another hat and say, okay, well, this is about me. Now let me talk about my potential client and say, what problem am I solving for them? Because if you're not really solving a problem, and I want to be very clear about what a problem looks like. A problem doesn't have to be a true problem. It doesn't have to be, oh no, I've got a flat tire. It could be, I want ice cream. And that, for our purposes, that's the problem. That's a need that's being filled or a problem that's being solved. And then when you do that, like think about, all right, well, I'm solving this problem. What kind of impact do I want my clients and my community to have from my services? Now, is it that I want everybody to have a sunshine smile face and they have their ice cream and they're happy? Or is it that I want to help people with end of life care? It can be just that wide. It just depends on what you offer. So what kind of impact? Do you want to bring joy? Do you want to bring peace? Do you want to bring relief? Do you want to bring challenge? Maybe you're a gym owner and you want to challenge people. Or are you a gym owner and you want to encourage people and say, listen, doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. So kind of let's get started. So really just depends on what kind of an impact you want to have on your clients. And then bring it back to yourself. What kind of legacy do I want to leave in my own life? So when you're writing your mission statement and you start to ask some of these deep probing questions, I would suggest that you write some of these things down. And when you're writing them down, really think about what is it that is your company's true mission. In doing so, you're going to all the more be able to attract the right kinds of people because you're in alignment with yourself. So one of the things that I like to do, it's kind of like an I help statement. So it's very short, but then you can expound on your mission statement from here. So when I say an I help statement, you can say something like, I help small businesses find the best clients they can through my alignment attraction process. So you can say something along those lines. You can also say, let's say, again, you are a family attorney or family law attorney. You could say, I'm a family law attorney and I help people get divorced. So, sure, that's one way, but there's a better way to do it. If you really think about your alignment, you really think about your mission, you might be able to say something along the lines of, if I wanted to help mom and dad no longer be husband and wife, or say something along the lines of, I help parents continue to be mom and dad while no longer being husband and wife. You don't even have to say the word divorce, but it kind of gives a sense of what your mission is. So while that's not a mission statement in its truest form, that's the kind of alignment that you're looking for when you start to write out your mission statement.
Yes, that's right. A well-crafted mission statement will truly attract the right client. Once they understand that your business speaks their language, you will attract the clients that you truly want to serve. And it's got to be crafted well. It's got to be in line with the values that your ideal client has.
And what you have too. You want it to be in alignment with your own values, which is how you would attract clients that share values. And again, they don't have to be just like you, and they don't necessarily have to have the same skills you do, or else why would they hire you? But when you have that alignment within yourself and you have it in your mission statement, you can not only permeate to your clients, but it can also permeate to colleagues and potential coworkers too, people you might end up hiring for your business. If you can communicate to them that this is the impact we want to have whenever we engage with our client, that is a true mission statement. That's the mission of the business. And then that actually translates to, how you craft your messaging going forward, which is obviously I touch on that in the book. So again, crafting a mission statement takes a little time. I can offer up a more complex formula, but it really is something that needs to be batted around and needs to be thought about and needs to make sure that there's alignment. And it sounds like an easy thing to do, but it really isn't. Searching that alignment, making sure that you are behind your company's mission and that you use a language that conveys that is so so critical. So yeah, that mission isn't just about you, and it isn't just about your potential coworkers, and it isn't just about your potential clients or colleagues, but also the community you serve.
And many of these same rules and principles also apply when creating USPs as well. When your business has a great USP, then now you're targeting certain clients that are within your client avatar. You want to make sure that you have something unique. You're differentiating yourself from all your competitors out there. But at the same time, while doing so, you want to make sure that you're appealing to the client that fall within your avatar. You don't want to create one that will attract the wrong customer, because then you're just going to have a nightmare on your hands later, as you mentioned in the book.
That's correct. It's interesting too, with regards to, crafting a USP or a unique selling proposition. In doing so, people are always kind of freaking out about, well, I'm not doing anything differently, or I do offer the same things. Sometimes a USP can be not necessarily what you offer, but how you offer it, or something that separates you just in the slightest way from somebody else. So for example, my company GOBEYOND, what we offer that's a little bit different than our competitors is we won't work with your competitors. So for example, if I'm working with somebody who, let's say, is an HVAC company and they're in, Topeka, I'm not going to work with another HVAC company within a certain geographic area, because we find that unethical. It's just not the approach that we take. So we offer geographic exclusivity, but that's not something that everybody offers. Or if there are people, other companies like mine that do offer that, they don't necessarily call it out. Now, do I still offer a lot of the same stuff that my competitors do? Yes, I do. But that's just one little differentiator that could put somebody over the edge as to wanting to work with you. And that particular differentiator is an especially strong selling point when we're selling or marketing ourselves, because it does speak, much like what we were just talking about, to our values and our mission. So it's to serve small business owners, not to get them to compete with one another. So again, when you have the right mission, it'll actually permeate how you show up and how your business shows up and what kind of impact you can have on the community you serve.
That's right. It's got to reflect solely on what you've developed, on your values and your ideas. It's got to really help the business stand out amongst a very large crowd, especially in a saturated market. For example, we're in Houston. Houston is very saturated. You name any type of business, you'll find many competitors on one corner. HVAC, plumbing, electrical, they're on every corner. Web designers like CDG, there's several on every corner here too. And I can honestly say the one thing that separates CDG from other companies in the Houston area is that we offer after-hour service to the clients. Yes, we do have a set of business hours that we list on our Google profile, and that's just basically for when our office is open. But even after or before those hours, we still offer after-hour service for clients who wish to work with us. They want to work with us at a time that's good for them, because sometimes a lot of them have full-time jobs still, so they haven't truly broken away from the grind yet. They're still working for someone else while they're trying to start their business, so that hinders them from, unfortunately, meeting with us during business hours. So what do? We set appointments, and we do them virtual too, so they don't even have to come to us. They can do it right out of the comfort of their own home, and we allow our customers to watch us work. We'll screen share with them using Google Meet or AnyDesk, and we'll actually let them watch us work, so that way they can give live feedback on what they want changed.
Wow, that's great. What a great USP that is. And again, some of those things that you offer, others may, I've never heard of them, but may offer that as well. But in the absence of a true call out, if you don't put that in your marketing somewhere, or when somebody asks you, how are you different? And you can't put forth that answer, a lot of times it'll work against you. Not only do I think that you've done it properly, but you've really listened to what your client avatar needs, which is, especially for small business owners who are getting started, is they want to know that their money is going somewhere. So you offer them flexibility and transparency. I think that's great, Christian. Really, I think that's awesome. You should be very proud of those call outs. Those are great.
Thank you. It makes me feel good to hear that my USP actually has some good value to it. And while we're on the discussion of money, you've actually helped me transition right into my next question for you. Many first-time business owners often struggle with managing money due to a lack of financial expertise. Now, I read about it in your book, but please tell us more about the process profit first system that ensures a business is both profitable and financially stable. A lot of business owners, they struggle with this. They don't know how to obtain capital. When they get money, they probably blow it in certain areas where they shouldn't, and this unfortunately creates problems with them even getting the business off the ground. This prevents them from hiring or obtaining equipment or other necessary items they need to start the business.
Oh, no, you're completely right. And really, in the absence of proper money management, you really don't have a business. At worst, you may even just have inherited yourself a job. So in the absence of proper money management, you really don't have a business. So Profit First was written by a gentleman named, and I'm going to butcher his last name, so forgive me for this. His name is Mike Michalowicz, I believe is how you say it. I don't know for sure. But if you haven't had the opportunity to read it, I highly recommend it. And I'll also make a recommendation about a bank that I use for all three of my businesses, because the bank is set up in such a way that it will help you set up the Profit First accounting system in and of itself. Like, it's designed, the whole bank was built around the Profit First system. So essentially what Profit First is exactly what it says, which means you take profit first. So you have multiple bank accounts, and in your bank account, you have what you call a revenue account or an income account, meaning that's where all of your money comes. Anytime somebody pays you, it goes into this account. And from that account, the money gets distributed among different buckets, one of which is taxes, because that is just the price you pay for success, is that you do have to pay your taxes. Particularly once you've become a profitable business, you're going to have to pay taxes. Most of the time, you're not necessarily paying as much as you would, if at all, or you'll get, basically a refund if you're not profitable. But like the way I have it set up, I have a couple of different accounts, but you have a tax account, you have an income account, you have your owner's pay account, and you have your operating expenses account, which is where most of your money is probably going to end up, because you're operating from the operations expenses. So like your internet bill or your phone bill or whatever other expenses you have, whether you're buying product or you're buying software. But the way that the system works is that you delineate percentages from all of the income that you have that go to these different buckets. So you pay yourself a certain amount depending on what your percentages are, and then the rest gets distributed among those other accounts. And you operate your business from what's left over, not from what comes in. And the reason why this system works is it forces you to look and work within your operating expense account and operate your business from there. So it's less than what you're making, but then you automatically have some profitability. So I'm not the best person to talk to about this. This is clearly not my areas of expertise, but it is how I manage my own business. So everything kind of comes into the income or revenue account, and then certain percentages get delineated to different accounts. I personally have a COGS account, because my COGS, which is a cost of goods sold, is actually on the higher side. I'm working on bringing it down, but it's on the higher side. So I have a separate account for that as well. So I can see how much money I have available for COGS, and how much money has been put into my tax account, and how much money is available in my operating expenses account, so that I know if I have any additional expenses that are coming in the following month, I can look at my OPEX account and say, can I afford this? And if the answer is no, then I have to wait. And I'm not pulling from my own salary. I'm not pulling from, any savings, and better, I'm not going into debt. So, and I don't want to get into debt management or how to leverage debt. I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but I really love the Profit First system. I feel that it's extremely helpful. And the bank that we use is something called RelayFi. And I'm more than happy, Christian, to give you a link to that if you're interested. But it's Relay Financial. It's exclusively online. There are no brick and mortars that you can walk into. And right now, they're only serving the United States. They are not working with international companies yet, but I pay the team through there. I also use Gusto for the salaried employees, and then, use Relay for the 1099s. But I love it. I think it's probably one of the cleanest user experiences I've ever had working with a bank. I'm a big fan of Relay, and I'm a big fan of Profit First.
Yes, the Profit First system definitely helps put a better perspective on money management. It takes what would normally be a boring topic and make it more interesting, more enticing. When they hear the words Profit First, then business owners should think, okay, if I follow this methodology, I will see more overall money in my account at the end of the day, mainly for me to use. Now, you mentioned cost of goods sold. Now, cost of goods sold can be very, very challenging for certain businesses. Now, I can't really speak about that because I run a service-based business, not one that sells physical goods, but I often wonder about this myself, because I often often wonder, how do people price certain items and know they're going to make a profit? I mean, I think, for example, let's talk about Mike Ilitch, the founder of Little Caesars. He built an entire empire off of at one time, $5 pizza. It's no longer $5 anymore because of inflation, but he identified the problem. People wanted pizza. They wanted it at a good price, and they wanted a decent quality one that wouldn't break the bank. And, you know, other chains like Domino's and Papa John's and Pizza Hut, they weren't exactly the most cost effective. So he wanted to go in and break that. And he actually breaks a rule, too, that one major business coach I interviewed a few years ago said, and that is not to make price your USP. But he did anyway with Little Caesars, and they're not known for having the best ingredients, but they still make a stellar product that serves its purpose and solves that problem of people who are hungry for pizza.
Right.
The biggest thing about Mike Ilitch and Little Caesars that I have mad respect for them is the fact that they've grown into this massive empire and they are still a family-owned business.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned COGS, and I want to be very clear too. Every business gets managed in a slightly different way, but even though it's called cost of goods sold, for me, some of those goods are really just projects. So I treat them like they're a product, but they're not. So for example, I have one designer who is not on the payroll, and I use her for very specific kinds of websites. And I price that out when I know what her price is going to be. So whenever I sell one of those, then she gets paid. The reason why it's a cost of goods sold and why like it's not an expense in the traditional sense is because I only pay her when I have sold one of those products. Whereas like a bookkeeper or an executive assistant, they get paid a salaried amount every month. So they're more of an expense. Does that make sense? I hope that kind of like separates it. Even though I don't really sell product either, I treat some of my services as products. And when people get paid, my COGS get paid, if that makes sense, is because I sold a product and I basically am keeping the profit over what they're charging me. I charge the client, whatever the difference is, I keep, and then I pay them. So that changes each month depending on whether or not I sold a website that I'm going to give to her as opposed to keeping it in-house. So I hope that clears it up too, as far as what I meant by that, because it is a bit of a misnomer because I'm not truly selling goods. So just because I know that your listeners are business owners, I don't want to confuse anything either. And with regards to the profit first component of it, like I said, I added a COGS account, but the main ones are like, you know, like I said, your income or your revenue, your owner's pay, your taxes, you know, the OPEX or the operating expenses, and then of course, you know, your profit account. But in my case, I include a COGS one too, because it does expand and contract, and it does help me determine, you know, how much money I need to charge to make sure that I cover everything.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And on top of that, this one particular designer has to be treated as a cost of goods sold expense because being that she is a contractor, a 1099 contractor and not a full-time employee, then she falls under that realm of being an outsourcing cost, basically. So that would be part of your cost of goods sold.
That's right.
Now, the next topic I want to discuss with you is about those nightmare clients that really could give us big headache. And this is how we're going to conclude the episode because this is very important right here. For all of the established business owners out there who are listening right now, what advice can you give them if they are currently handling difficult clients that don't fit their client avatar? I'm pretty sure there are some businesses out there who simply are taking on any client they can to make some extra money, when in reality, they shouldn't take this approach. You know, they're doing it anyway. They're breaking that rule just because they want to see profit come in. But for that select group of businesses and business owners, what advice do you have for them?
So one of the things that I had to do was take a good hard look at how much time this particular client was taking up. And I want to be very clear what I mean about time. I am not talking about services rendered. I'm talking about times they call, or if they send you 52 emails when really one would suffice, or you've explained your process or your product over and over again and they just don't seem to be satisfied, or if they're not collaborating. So there's tremendous amount of follow-up that's required. But the other time, the more insidious one, is when this person or this account is on your mind when you're on vacation, or it's on your mind when you're in the shower, or you're kind of mindlessly playing with your kids or listening to a spouse or partner talk about their day, but really you're still kind of caught up with this other person. At that point, if you could possibly begin to try to tally how much time that person is taking up, they're not worth it. I don't care how much they spend. They're not worth it. And what I would suggest, and this is kind of the catch-22 catch-22 that I found myself in, and it wouldn't surprise me if there are others listening that have this catch-22 as well, which is you don't want to let any one client, whenever possible, you don't want to let any one client take up so much of your time, space, and specifically revenue that you basically are working for them. Like if you have a client that if they fired you, your business would go under, you don't have a business, you have a job. And that I don't mean to be harsh, I don't mean to be unkind, because it was a very hard lesson I needed to learn as well. So what I ended up doing, because this book was written, I have several clients that could fit the avatar, if you will, of not the client you want to get, but there was one specific client that really inspired the book. And the tricky part that I found myself in was that he was a strategic partner, which meant he brought several clients to my agency. So if I fired him, I was essentially firing several other clients as well, because he would just take them and find somebody to replace me. So what I ended up doing was I stopped accepting business from him. I just kept telling him we were at capacity while I continued to grow the business and get to a place where I could replace the revenue so that I could let him go on his way and I was still covered and move things on. And it was hard. And then when we finally let him go, losing that revenue really was difficult. However, I insulated myself by cutting costs and being, taking some important measures to make sure that I wasn't spending more than I needed to. And then slowly but surely got to a place where I could replace the business and let him go. And there's two lessons in that. One, you don't want to let any one client, particularly if they're difficult, but really any one client, take up so much of your regular revenue that if they went away, it's a mortal wound. That's a dangerous place to be. Now, if you're brand new and it's your first client, of course, they're all your revenue. That makes sense. But as you grow and you have one client that's just taking up, 20, 40, 80% of your revenue, you've basically purchased yourself a job. And I'm just warning you now, be careful with that. If you're already in that situation, try to back out of it by replacing the revenue and not taking any additional business or trying to slowly but surely end the relationship without it being a mortal wound. And then the other side of it that I would say is interview the people that you are going to work with. Make sure that they're not looking to just hire you. You're looking in a weird way to collaborate with them. So kind of like when you're hiring somebody or you're looking for a job yourself, you're interviewing the job as much as the job is interviewing you. Like, is this a fit? Is this in alignment with me? And again, you don't have to necessarily want to go and break bread with this person, but can you work together? Can a collaborative and productive relationship be born of this account? And if the answer is no, you may want to reconsider because they will take up too much of your time. So my advice is to be discerning. If you found yourself in a situation where you are with a client that is less than stellar, do your best to redefine those boundaries within the contractual relationship. But if you find that that's already too far gone, then do your best to replace the revenue and let them go. It was literally one of the hardest things that I ever did, and I'll never, ever look back. There is happiness and green grass on the other side, I promise. Just be strategic about it, and hopefully you'll never be in that situation again. And hopefully listening to this prevents you from getting into that situation at all.
Yes, very well said. When anytime you work with a client, you want to make sure it's a healthy, beneficial relationship, not a one-sided one where you always feel like you're being drained from interacting with them, or that the money they're spending is not worth the work that you're putting in. Maybe they want to pay a lot less for a job that's probably worth several times more than that. And I'm going to add on to some of the things you've said here. For one thing, you should never allow a client, this is especially true for solopreneurs, all the solopreneurs out there who are listening, make sure you listen to this, never ever allow a client to treat you as an employee, even though you are a 1099 contractor with them. First, that's illegal. And secondly, they have no right to do that because they're going to see you, especially if you're just by yourself, a solopreneur, not working with anybody else, they're going to view you as somebody that they can easily control because you're not working with somebody else. They're going to try to make you come into their office during certain hours. They're going to try to have you on call whenever they need something. Make sure you do not allow this to happen, and that when you write your contracts with them, make sure you state specifically this is not an employee-employer relationship, and that all the work that you're producing is to be done on a 1099 basis. Make sure that there is clear separation between client and contractor. This is a client-contractor relationship, not an employee-employer relationship. Do not try to tell them you have to come in under certain hours or anything like that. They cannot dictate how you do things because you do not work for them in that sense. They are your client, but you don't work for them as an employee. So never allow them to use the project you're giving them as a leash. Secondly, always remember, while the customer may be always right, the customer does not have the right to decide the price. Yes, they have the the right to decide how much they're going to spend. And if your company happens to be outside of their budget, then you have to politely inform them that you're not a good fit and they need to look elsewhere. Do not give in to them by lowering your price for them. You can't go into the store. Let's say you go into Walmart, for example. You see a TV that you want to buy. It's $1,000, but you don't have $1,000. You tell the cashier, I'm going to buy that TV for $500 because it's all I can afford. It doesn't work that way. They're not going to give in. They're not going to lower it just because you asked for it. The same thing applies when you are dealing with your clients. Do not allow them to set the prices because you as a business owner determine the prices, not them. Next, it's important to remember that when a client is being overbearing and over-demanding, this client is basically one of those bosses that you hated working for so much that you decide to leave the corporate world and start your own business. If you start to see those same traits from those bad bosses you did not like working for in your clients, that should be an immediate indicator that this is not a good fit and that you should consider not working with them. Like you said, Trish, just make sure that you begin the process of phasing out the relationship and completing whatever you're contractually obligated to finish, and then just try to move on from that. And always make sure that you do put your clients first and that the clients understand that you care about them. Sometimes they will try to guilt trip you. What I'm trying to say is that don't allow your clients to guilt trip you whenever you are doing the right thing, but maybe they have unrealistic demands to where they feel that maybe it wasn't what they wanted. That should have all been determined during the fact-finding session. Make sure that they already have a good, clear understanding of what they're going to be getting, and make sure that whenever they ask for something that is outside of the contract you have with them or the package they purchased from you, make sure that you let them know that they have to be charged for it. Sometimes you will get clients who will get really upset that you're charging them for work that you have to charge them for. That tells me right there that they didn't read the agreement. They just signed it and returned it to you without reading it. In my contracts, I outline how much everything costs if they want anything extra beyond what's in the package they purchased. And every now and then I will get a client who will be like, why are you charging me this? Why are you charging me that? And that tells me they didn't read the contract. It's in plain English. I even highlighted that area in red so that they don't miss it. And I still get people who ask these questions. So do not allow clients to guilt trip you simply because you're charging them for something that wasn't in the original agreement. And whenever they make statements like, I feel you're putting other clients ahead of me, or I don't think you're being as serious about this job and I paid X amount of money. Again, reassure to them that you are fulfilling the contract, but do not allow them to guilt trip you into thinking that you aren't holding up your end of the deal, or just because they have those beliefs. Sometimes you will get clients who have that mindset. All I can say is that be respectful to them, show them you're getting the job done, but never give in to their guilt tripping. That'll just ruin your morale, and overall in the end, not only will the job feel less rewarding, but you'll probably feel defeated by the time the project's over, thinking that you didn't bring your A game when you in fact did, and they just wanted to be picky.
Right. I completely agree with you. And again, I think most clients come to the table with an open mind and an open heart. And sometimes, they've been burned or something along those lines. But I will say this, that others see it as an opportunity to talk you down because you're a small business or because you're a solopreneur, and just don't buy it. That's the one thing I would say, is trust your instincts. If you get a sense that this person is going to give you a hard time, you're probably right. And I think this is the biggest one too. And I know this happened to me quite a bit, where my instincts would say no, 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 but I couldn't find data in my experience with this person to support it. I just couldn't find it. It was just something about them or an instinct that I had, and I just couldn't find the external data to support it. So I didn't trust my instincts. And what I will say is, having done this for a long time, is my instincts have literally never been wrong. Sometimes I just didn't get confirmation until much, much later. And again, I'm not talking about prejudging people or saying, well, I don't like working with this person because of XYZ. I'm talking about like something in your stomach, your intuition is shouting, don't move forward with this. Listen to it. Because even if you don't get immediate confirmation that your instincts were correct, you may never get that confirmation that your instincts were correct. But that's why we have them. So again, there've been a couple of times where I'm like, man, I really should have seen that, or should have felt that. I did see it and feel it. I just didn't trust myself enough. And I touch on this in the book too. And that's a little bit around mindset too. It's just trusting yourself, trusting the experience that you have, trusting your gut, and coming to the table with a mindset of knowing that you deserve what you're charging. That, if you've decided that this is inappropriate, that might not be a good fit for everybody, but you will find there are people out there charging more for people who are less experienced than you are, and they're getting it. it. So every time you think that you're not charging enough or that you're not good enough to charge or this client is going to bully you and push you around, just know that you don't need to, nor should you put up with it. There's always more business around the corner. Even when it feels like there isn't, there always is.
Yes, that's right. I agree wholeheartedly about trusting your instinct, because the last thing you want is to have your gut feeling confirmed the hard way by you actually signing on with this client and then enduring all this hardship with them later. They end up being a nightmare to deal with. The best thing to do is just to trust your gut feeling. If you feel that it's not going to work out, it's best just to walk away from it. And so a few years ago, I got a referral from another existing client, and she wanted to start a clothing business. Now, she did not have the budget for the website that she needed. In fact, the website that she wanted to get, her dream website, was nowhere close to her budget. So she comes in with 2 kids. You know, she picked up her kids from school, and she seems a bit stressed out. She's also not very friendly either when she shows up at my office. And she explains to me she wants to sell clothes online. The first thing she says to me is, "What is the lowest price you can give me for this?" That's my first red flag right there. Well, maybe the second red flag, I should say. The first red flag was the fact that she was already a bit rude to begin with. Now, when we were talking, she explained to me her needs, and she told me she had a budget of, I think, $300, which is far under what this project she needed would have cost. So I told her, "Your referring friend," this was the website I built for her. It was a 1-page landing page, which is all she needed. And I told her, "This is all you can get for about that much, maybe a little bit more." And she goes, "I don't care about any of that. I just want to know, what can you get me for $300? I already explained to her by example what it was. So she asked again, even though I just explained by example. And, you know, she was just getting a bit fussy. And I told her, "You're looking at least $1,000 or more for this type of website." She goes, "Well, I found this company out in Georgia who will build my website I want for only $300. And then I respectfully told her, "Then I think they would be a better fit for you."
Go with them.
Right. That's exactly what I said. And she goes, "I came all the way down here with my kids and everything. It was over an hour drive. I fought traffic, and that was her problem. That's not my problem. She chose to come here knowing very well she did not have the money to spend on this project. So that's on her. I have nothing to do with that."
That's exactly correct. And you're right off the bat, like you said, you can tell that there's something up, because she made all those decisions and was very willing to not take any accountability for her choice to come and speak to you. Now I understand sometimes if you have an expectation and you're disappointed, that can happen. But the expectation is just as much a responsibility too. You did not get engaged in an agreement with this woman. You did not engage in even a price discussion until after she was already in your office and was already abrupt and rude. And I think you probably agree. You dodged the proverbial bullet by not engaging with her, because nothing you did was going to make her happy, because she came in with her baseline being unhappy. You know what I mean? Like did not come with a collaborative spirit at all. And creative work is collaborative. So you made the wise choice there, that's for sure.
Right. She didn't come in with a collaborative spirit. She came in with a demanding, "I want this for this much, and you better give it to me, or you're not getting my business" type attitude. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. But fortunately for me, I was able to send her on her way, and I'm hoping that she found what she needed elsewhere, because I certainly wasn't going to take on that project. And also, one other thing I'd like to share is that when I first started CDG, one of my very first clients was a nightmare client. Even though she had the money and she spent the money well for the project that she needed, she was unrealistic. She also wasn't very collaborative. She didn't really know what she wanted, even though I went through the fact-finding stage with her and provided her a very nice-looking website. There was just something about her. Like, she just couldn't get happy. Like, no matter how nice it looked, there was just no pleasing her. So, in fact, one time she called me without an appointment at midnight to complain. Yeah, I foolishly took the call. It was a rookie mistake I made when I started the business. I foolishly took the call, and she was just angry. She was unhappy. She felt like nothing was getting done, even though we already had the website, I would say at the time, probably about 70% complete. It was nearly done, but
oh my.
It was a nightmare. And eventually I was able to cut loose from this client because she silently ended the relationship overall later, which was also unprofessional on her part, because she didn't tell me that she was switching companies. And I bet you she did the exact same thing to whoever that was she was working with later. And then I found out a few years later that she was no longer in business. Go figure.
Well, that's not surprising at all, because you can't engage with other humans that way and expect to maintain relationships. You just can't. I don't care how much money you have. Eventually, people get over your crap, and that's the truth.
Right? Because sometimes it's not only about the money. They might be spending very very good amounts of money at your business. But if they're not conducting themselves appropriately, acting professional or acting collaborative, if they're just always being a drain on your business and they're not cooperating with you when you need their feedback, it doesn't help you, especially when a client gets really angry that something isn't done. But the reason why something isn't done is because you needed their feedback on a few things first, or maybe you were missing something from them. Maybe you needed some content for a certain page or for certain pages within the website, and that's why it wasn't done. In fact, this comes to mind too. A few years ago, I was watching Judge Judy, and there was a case where a client was suing his web designer because it wasn't complete. He was selling sports jerseys. The case ended up getting dismissed. Judge Judy said, "You brought your case to court prematurely." You know why? The website was not done because the web designer needed the information for the jerseys, which the client never provided. He needed the pictures, the sizes, the names, the prices, all which the client was supposed to provide and never did. Then the client gets all upset that the website is not done, and he decides he wants to sue him on Judge Judy, and she saw right through it.
Yep. And she's pretty good. I mean, as entertaining as that show could be, she really could see through, when somebody really wasn't, almost what these people don't see in themselves. Like, this is an absurd case, like you're making an unreasonable case. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me.
Those are the types of clients that we hope we never engage with. He had no reason to sue him. It was the client's fault that the website was not finished.
Yep. And it doesn't surprise me because, again, even somebody who's willing to take it that far and have no acknowledgement of their own accountability in it, that's usually a red flag too. Like if someone can't take responsibility for their own, and that seems to be the issue with a lot of small business owners, is we fall on the sword so much faster for our clients. Like we'll fall on the sword. We will say, "Oh no, it's our fault, it's our fault." And sometimes, givers attract takers, right? So if you're in service to someone, a lot of times that means you're a giving person. But you need to remember that this is a transaction. And sometimes when you're a giving person, you really do want to do right by your client. You want to make sure that they're happy. Sometimes we, go above and beyond for our clients, right? I mean, it's part of the reason why we named our company Go Beyond, is because we like to go beyond what they expect. However, there is a line, and you have to be careful that if you sense that somebody is not going to be collaborative, much like the example you just gave with people who went on Judge Judy, it's like I said, givers attract takers. So you just have to be careful to not get taken.
That's exactly right. Givers attract takers. And that's why I always tell other business professionals, remember, when a client wants a discount and you give it to them, they're going to be over demanding. They're going to be abusive towards you. They're going to make you feel like that you owe them the world, not just what they're paying for, especially if they're asking for discounts and you give in and give them that discount. They are just going to nickel and dime you to death. And then you're just going to lose all your morale, and it could end up going to the point to where you just want to shut down your business. I want to conclude by saying, business owners, look for the red flags. If you feel that a client is going to be a nightmare, take a step back, do some reflecting, and think, and ask this question to yourself. Is this client worth working with? Are they going to help me, or are they going to hurt me?
That's exactly right.
Now, as we conclude, Trish, is there anything else you would like to share with us that we did not cover that could be very useful or helpful to all of our listeners?
Well, I do have one other thing I'd like to mention. And if you already have your own listenership and your listeners like to listen to things about business and like to learn about what it is and the unique position that we find ourselves in when we make the very brave decision to work for ourselves, I also have a podcast, and I have two other co-hosts with me, and it's called Breaking Even Better. So I would imagine that, my listeners and your listeners probably have a lot in common. So when I do share this episode, I'm going to share it with my listeners as well. And I hope that anybody who listens might be interested in listening to our podcast as well. Because again, we talk about a lot of the same topics, and business ownership is hard, Christian. It is. And there's a community of us who tend to rely on one another simply because we do sit down like, how would you fix this challenge? Or how would you deal with X, Y, and Z? Even people who, much like you and I, have crossover with regards to the services we offer. I think you personally would be a tremendous resource for me, and I would hope to be one for you as well. I never really see people in the same industry as competition. I see it more as cooperation, because it's never exactly the same thing. Like there's always a collaborative component. There's always stuff that I'm not that good at that I would like to hand off to other people. And in Breaking Even Better, our tagline is we keep it raw, real, and unfiltered. And part of what we do is talk about what it was like to have a mishire where we hired somebody and then had to fire them, or, had to fire a client. Again, much like Get More Clients You Love, that's how that relationship ended did. We fired him. Now, we ended up firing several clients, but that one was the biggest one to manage. And we talk about profit first, and we talk about other business books that we've read and that we enjoy. So I feel like there's a good crossover there. So that's really the only other thing that we didn't touch on that I wanted to mention was Breaking Even Better, as far as another podcast, just another resource for business owners, because we can't get enough of them, truly.
Yes, exactly. And you stress the importance of ongoing learning in your book, and these podcasts are great resources for business owners who just want to learn some new things, some tips of the trade, things that could help them enrich themselves better. So where can we find your podcast at? What platforms is it on?
Sure. So the podcast is on YouTube. It's also on Spotify and on Apple. So anywhere you get your podcast, for the most part, it's there. Again, it's called Breaking Even Better. So much like the turn of phrase breaking even, but breaking even better. And yeah, so that's the podcast. I also have a company, I have my own digital marketing firm, like I mentioned. But yeah, I feel like your listeners would probably benefit best from listening to the podcast too. And I'm sure they get a lot out of yours.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We discuss all sorts of topics that I feel other business owners are too scared to discuss, because if you listen to other BizCast episodes, we have a very hands-on approach. I have a very take no prisoners approach. I tell everything like it is. I will never sugarcoat. I will be just downright honest about certain things. You may have got that throughout our conversation today, but I tell everything like it is. I've shared many examples of where business owners had dropped the ball. I've also shared many success stories. And if you really want to have that raw, unfiltered, tell it like it is, no nonsensical approach, then CDG BizCast is your podcast. It's one of many out there, but we like to tell everything like it is. We really want to help you. We don't want to see you fail. And with that being said, I would like to conclude this episode by saying that business owners, whether you are seasoned or you're a startup, make sure you know who your customer is ahead of time. Make sure you know how to attract the right clients. And Trish, you've shared a lot of great information with us today. I certainly want to encourage all of our listeners to check out your book, because I want every business owner out there to be successful. I don't want you to go through headaches or deal with the types of clients and nightmare stories that we've shared today. We want you to start off on the right foot. We really want you to go out there. We want to see your businesses flourish. We want you to be happy. We don't want you to feel miserable. Running a business should not feel like a job. I've heard many people say, if you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life. And that's especially true for running a business, because if you truly love working for yourself, you're not working, you're enjoying life.
That's exactly right. Well said.
And also, before we go, can you please tell us where we can purchase your book?
Sure. Right now, it is only available on Amazon. So I'm more than happy to share a link with you, Christian.
We're also going to include it in the episode description too. So when this episode goes up on YouTube and all the other platforms, there'll be a link in there to buy it. And also, business owners, if you go to creativitydesignGroup.com, our company's webpage, we have a dedicated page on our website with recommended books for business owners. Trish, your book is going to be added on there very soon. I recommend all of our listeners to go to, again, creativitydesignGroup.com. You're going to hover over the resources tab in the navigation, and then you're going to click on recommended books for business owners. You will find all of our recommended reading, as well as links to where you can buy these books. And if we interviewed the author of those books, we will have a link to the podcast episode as well. Thanks again, Trish. This was a very powerful episode. You shared a lot of wonderful tips that I have not heard anybody else talk about. This episode alone was very unique. Thank you for all your contributions to the small business world in terms of educating and empowering business owners.
Well, thank you, Christian, for your impact and for the invitation as well. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I appreciate the candor and genuine nature that you bring to this podcast. This was really fun to chat with you. So thanks for the invitation, and thanks for having me.
Yes, likewise. And thank you, listeners, for listening to the CDG BizCast. We wish you the best in success. May your startups flourish, and may your futures be bright.